Narrated by Grand Strategist Vorek of the Kethali Dominion, Senior Military Advisor, 32 years of service. Never lost a war. Until humans showed up. Let me tell you something about the day Supreme Commander Drath called me into his office with that smug look on his face. You know the one. The look a predator gives right before it realizes it is in fact the prey. He slapped a data pad on the table between us, and on that data pad was a single transmission. Short, direct, almost rude, honestly. It read, "You attacked one of our colony ships. We are giving you one warning. 1. Do it again, and we will respond. You will not enjoy it. Set Admiral Petra Voss, United Earth Command." Drath laughed. I did not laugh. Because here is the thing about laughter, gentlemen. It is best enjoyed when you actually know what you are laughing at. We did not know what we were laughing at. The humans, Earth, Sol system, single species planet. No interstellar empire, no alliance backing them up, no ancient grudge fueling some dramatic war campaign. Just one species on one planet, with one very short, very direct message. Drath laughed some more. He said, "And I remember this exactly. What are they going to do, Vorek? Fly here on their little metal ships and throw rocks at us?" I said nothing. I simply pulled up everything our intelligence division had on the humans. It was not much. That was the first problem. You see, in 32 years of warfare, whenever I faced an enemy I did not understand, it usually meant one of two things. Either they were too weak to bother documenting, or they were smart enough to make sure we could not document them properly. The humans fell into one of those two categories. I had a bad feeling I knew which one. The colony ship they attacked was called the Harlan's Pride, registered to the Kethali expansion fleet, carrying 400 colonists, military-grade cargo, and a full escort wing of 12 fighters. Our fighters. The best money could build. The human vessel that appeared out of nowhere, answered no hails, fired 3 shots, disabled all 12 fighters simultaneously without destroying a single one, and then left, was registered as a civilian freight hauler. A civilian freight hauler. The captain's name, we later found out, was a woman named Brix Olano. She was not military. She was not special forces. She was not some legendary ace pilot. She was a cargo runner who apparently got angry that our fighters clipped her ship's engine during a routine trade lane crossing 3 weeks prior. She got angry. So she disabled 12 military-grade Kethali fighters with a cargo ship, and then filed a complaint with Earth Customs about the delay it caused her delivery schedule. I want you to sit with that for a moment. I really do. When I presented this information to Drath, he stopped laughing. Good. Progress. But he replaced the laughing with something worse. Pride. He straightened up, puffed out his chest, and said the Kethali Dominion did not negotiate with single-planet species who had not yet colonized beyond their own solar system. Technically accurate. Also technically the stupidest strategic decision I had ever witnessed. I said, "Sir, with respect, their civilian cargo runner just humiliated our escort wing. Perhaps we should find out what their military ships look like before we make any decisions." He said, "Vorek, you are being paranoid." I said, "Sir, I am being paid to be paranoid." He dismissed me anyway. 3 days later, he authorized a second strike on human colonial territory, specifically, a fuel depot at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Small installation, lightly staffed, easy target. He called it a show of force. I called it something else. I called it exactly what that Admiral Petra Voss told us not to do. The strike wing launched. 47 ships. Our best. Drath even held a small ceremony. Drinks were served. Someone played music. It was very festive. I stood in the back of the room and watched the countdown clock. 47 ships entered the Kepler 442 system at 0600 hours. By 0612, we had received no confirmation of engagement. By 0619, we had received no communication at all. By 0634, we received one transmission. Not from our fleet, from Admiral Petra Voss. It said, "We warned you. We are coming. Prepare accordingly." No drama, No long speech, no declaration of war. Just 7 words and a timestamp. Drath looked at me across that festive little room. I looked back at him. I said, "Sir, where are our 47 ships?" He had no answer. Nobody had an answer. Because 47 ships do not simply vanish. They do not forget to call home. They do not get lost. They were the finest vessels in our fleet, crewed by the best pilots the Dominion had produced in a generation. And they were gone. Completely. Totally. Without a single distress beacon. Without a single emergency pulse. Without even a piece of debris we could track. Just gone. Like they had never existed. And somewhere out there, across the stars, a human admiral named Petra Voss was already on her way. I poured myself a drink. A long one. Because I had a feeling we were all going to need it. Let me tell you what panic looks like at the highest levels of military command. It looks exactly like dignity. That is the terrifying part. Nobody screams. Nobody runs. Everyone sits very straight in their chairs, speaks in calm, measured tones, and uses words like reassessing and strategic recalibration and temporary tactical uncertainty. All of which, if you strip away the professional vocabulary, mean exactly one thing. We had no idea what was coming, and we were absolutely terrified. Drath called an emergency session of the High Command within the hour. Every senior general, every fleet admiral, every intelligence director who could be reached was pulled into that room. The table was long, the faces were long, the silence before anyone spoke was the longest thing of all. I sat at the far end, said nothing, and waited. General Orvac spoke first. He was the kind of officer who had never personally lost a battle, mostly because he had never personally been near one. He suggested we send a diplomatic envoy to Earth immediately, acknowledge the misunderstanding, offer reparations. Admiral Sef, who had actually commanded ships in combat and therefore understood things, asked a very simple question. He said, "How do we send an envoy when we do not know what happened to our 47 ships? What if the envoy simply also disappears?" Silence. "Good question, Admiral Sef." Nobody had an answer for that either. I finally spoke. I said, "We should listen to the transmission again." Drath looked at me like I had suggested something mildly embarrassing. He said they had already heard it. 7 words. Nothing tactical. Nothing useful. I said, "Play it again anyway." They played it again. "We warned you. We are coming. Prepare accordingly." And there it was. The thing I had caught the first time but said nothing about, because sometimes you need a room full of frightened generals to be ready to hear something before you say it out loud. I said, she said, "Prepare accordingly." The room looked at me. I said, "She is not saying she is coming to destroy us. She is saying she is coming. And she is telling us to prepare. That is not the language of extermination, gentlemen. That is the language of someone who wants us to be conscious and functional when they arrive. Someone who wants us aware." More silence. Deeper this time. Admiral Sef said, quietly, "That is somehow worse." Yes, it was. The human fleet arrived in 41 hours. Not weeks, not months. 41 hours. From the edge of their colonial territory to the heart of Kethali space in 41 hours. Our fastest military vessels would have taken 9 days to cover the same distance. We did not know they could move that fast. We also did not know what their ships looked like up close, because our long-range sensors kept getting confused. The human vessels had a strange quality about them. They did not match any profile in our database. They were not large, by fleet standards. 32 ships total. Against the hundreds we still had stationed near our home systems, 32 ships sounded almost polite. Almost. The human fleet stopped at the edge of our defensive perimeter, just stopped, held position, did not fire, did not advance, did not communicate. They just waited. For 6 hours they waited. Drath, who I think had not slept since the 47 ships disappeared, demanded we open a channel. He was going to negotiate. He was going to be statesmanlike about this. He straightened his uniform, cleared his throat, and opened the channel himself. He said, "This is Supreme Commander Drath of the Kethali Dominion. We are prepared to discuss terms." A pause. A short one. And then a voice came through. Calm. Female. Unhurried. The voice of someone who was not in a rush because they did not need to be. Admiral Petra Voss said, "Commander Drath, good. You are exactly who I wanted to speak with." Drath blinked. I think he expected more hostility, something to push against. Anger he could mirror back. Instead he got the tone of a person scheduling a meeting. He said, "Where are ships?" "The 47 vessels we sent to Kepler 442. She said safe. Crew is fed and comfortable. Ships are intact. We did not destroy them because destroying them would have made this conversation harder to have. We will return them after we are finished talking." Drath stared at the comm panel. I leaned forward in my seat. She had captured 47 warships. Intact. Without destroying them. Fed the crews. And held them as leverage she did not even need to mention. Because we already knew. Drath said, slowly, "What do you want, Admiral?" She said, "Simple things, Commander. The trade lane through the Kepler corridor belongs to neutral territory under the Galactic Accords, which your Dominion signed 14 years ago. Your fighters violated that corridor when they clipped Captain Olano's vessel. You then struck one of our colony ships without provocation, and when we issued a formal warning, you struck again. Twice, you ignored a warning. So I came to make sure the third warning lands properly." Drath said, "And what is the third warning?" A pause. Longer this time. The kind of pause that is not uncertainty. The kind of pause that is deliberate. Designed to make you feel the weight of what comes next. She said, "There is no third warning, Commander. This conversation is the third warning. You now know we can take 47 of your ships without losing one of ours. You now know we can cross your space in 41 hours. You now know we are standing at your doorstep with 32 ships, and you have hundreds, and you are still the one sweating." She let that breathe for exactly 3 seconds. Then she said, "Agree to the corridor terms. Pay reparations to Captain Olano for her cargo delay. And we go home. That is all we want. We are not interested in your territory. We are not interested in your resources. We are interested in being left alone, and in making absolutely certain you understand what happens when that preference is ignored." The room was so quiet I could hear Drath breathing. He agreed. Of course he agreed. Every single term, without negotiation, without a counter-offer. The full reparations, the corridor agreement, a formal written acknowledgement of fault filed with the Galactic Council, all of it. In under 10 minutes. The human fleet turned around and left. Smooth, organized, unhurried, like a group of people who had finished their errands and were heading home before dinner. Our 47 ships were released at the Kepler 442 boundary 6 hours later. Crews unharmed, ships fully operational. Someone had even restocked their food supplies. I stood at the observation window and watched them dock. Drath came and stood beside me. He said nothing for a long time. Then he said quietly, "We never even found out how they took those ships." I said, "No, we did not." He said, "Do you think they would tell us if we asked?" I said, "I think they would smile and say it was not important, and that smile would keep you awake for a month." He nodded slowly. I picked up my datapad, opened a new file, began writing the full incident report for the Dominion archives. At the top, I wrote the title clearly, so that every future commander, every future admiral, every future admiral, every future politician who ever thought about poking the humans would have to read it first. The title was simple. They warned us, twice. We did not listen. Here is what that cost. Somewhere across the stars, I suspected, Admiral Petra Voss was already back at her desk, probably reviewing cargo manifests, probably approving delivery schedules, probably doing something aggressively ordinary, because that is the most frightening thing about humans. They do not need to be dramatic, they just need to be right, and they are almost always right.